Indeed, the world is very old, but every spring it grows young again when the angels of nature reconstruct it. While asleep and fused in a kiss that unlocked and merged their souls, Peter and Angelina shared their dreams while a nightingale sang nearby.
Falls the dew on the grass, where the winds hide their ears are creeping.
They left their bodies and were able as spirits to see far beyond human vision and on into the life of things. Time had slowed down, and so they could even catch flowers in the act of forming by mirroring the pixies and obtaining their colors from the reflections. Peter and Angelina watched as butterflies came to life in the souls of pansies, embodied there by an extension into the third dimension of fluttering flight, looking like flowers floating on air and leaving only their dusty shadow prints behind on the pansies. Angelina and Peter could see in the dark, for tulip lamps lit the path of the lane and the hollyhock torches illuminated the clearings. The secret hollows glowed at midnight from the crocuses that were cups of stored sunlight. In the luminous backwood haunts, the flowers could be seen growing from the touch of nymphs. They saw fairies' frocks made of elfin sewing and ladies' lockets or bleeding hearts, the two heart halves joined in love, a gift to the imagination from the spirits loosed from Eden along with Adam and Eve. From the virgin Virgo were strewn asters or starworts in the form of stardust and tears streaming down from the night sky. And wherever fairies had just romanced, wild pansies, once known as Jump Up and Kiss Me, soon sprouted and sprung from the amorous power of the sprite's images. Lighter than air in their spectral forms, Peter and Angelina flew down the slopes of the hillside, sailing just above treetop level, sometimes grabbing onto branches and slingshotting ahead, well out over a lake that was covered by a roiling fog, their perpetual momentum carrying them wherever they wished, a real-time virtual reality composed from the computing power of their united brains. They glided down the gradient from middle age into childhood, through all the timeless ages and all the ageless times. Peter was again the centaur and soon became Pegasus, having sprouted wings, and Angelina was transformed into the flying tigress. Here and there they darted in and out of the trees along the lake shore, sometimes clasping together their hearts, paws, talons, and feathers. The ground rose and fell as they winged along on a cushion of balmy air, washed for a time of all mortal cares, transforming to human-like forms in mid-air when they were high enough to be sustained by the updrafts. Up above the clouds they would embrace, and their soaring souls would intermingle and communicate at those wordless levels, those that gave life and meaning to figments and phantasms, which in turn gave substance to mirages, fantasies, and even further apparitions. Outer space was next, and their wraith-like forms hitched rides on the light beams from stars, riding them toward their source and passing on their way to other galaxies, burned-out worlds that were too close to their suns, and frozen planets that were too far away. Into the core of Andromeda they dashed, into the black hole at its center, the beginning of the cosmic subway line, its terminus in another universe wherein they emerged unscathed, clean and fresh, and bathed in the radiance of love and light, and connected in both kiss and thought, still joined by reflection and perception in the mystical experience that we always refer to as attachment, devotion, kinship, warmth, affection, passion, and love. It was the circle of energy that came from being one and in love, and so it sustained itself perpetually. Out came their bonded spirits to review the world and all the aspects of nature, spirits shining and glowing like vibrant glints and gleams among the facets of the diamond of life and love. And in this state they awoke somewhere in time, space, and energy, feeling relaxed and refreshed by their sleep, and blessed in serenity by the feeling of well-being.
the kiss that never dies. Spring. Indeed, the world is very old, but every spring it grows young again when the angels of nature reconstruct it. While asleep and fused in a kiss that unlocked and merged their souls, Peter and Angelina shared their dreams, while a nightingale sang nearby. They left their bodies and were able, as spirits, to see far beyond human vision and on into the life of things. Time had slowed down, and so they could even catch flowers in the act of forming, by mirroring the pixies and obtaining their colors from the reflections. Peter and Angelina watched as butterflies came to life in the souls of pansies, embodied there by an extension into the third dimension of fluttering flight, looking like flowers floating on air and leaving only their dusty shadow prints behind on the pansies. Angelina and Peter could see in the dark, for tulip lamps lit the path of the lane and the hollyhock torches illuminated the clearings. The secret hollows glowed at midnight from the crocuses that were cups of stored sunlight. In the luminous backwood haunts, the flowers could be seen growing from the touch of nymphs. They saw fairies' frocks made of elfin sewing and ladies' lockets, or bleeding hearts, the two heart halves joined in love, a gift to the imagination from the spirits loosed from Eden, along with Adam and Eve. From the virgin Virgo were strewn asters or starworts in the form of stardust and tears streaming down from the night sky. And wherever fairies had just romanced, wild pansies, once known as Jump Up and Kiss Me, soon sprouted and sprung from the amorous power of the sprites' images. Lighter than air in their spectral forms, Peter and Angelina flew down the slopes of the hillsides, sailing just above treetop level, sometimes grabbing onto branches and slingshotting ahead, well out over a lake that was covered by a roiling fog, their perpetual momentum carrying them wherever they wished, a real-time virtual reality composed from the computing power of their united brains. They glided down the gradient from middle age into childhood, through all the timeless ages and all the ageless times. Peter was again the centaur and soon became Pegasus, having sprouted wings, and Angelina was transformed into the flying tigress. Here and there they darted in and out of the trees along the lake shore, sometimes clasping together their hearts, paws, talons, and feathers. The ground rose and fell as they winged along on a cushion of balmy air, washed for a time of all mortal cares, transforming to human-like forms in mid-air when they were high enough to be sustained by the updrafts. Up above the clouds they would embrace, and their soaring souls would intermingle and communicate at those wordless levels, those that gave life and meaning to figments and phantasms, which in turn gave substance to mirages, fantasies, and even further apparitions. Outer space was next, and their wraith-like forms hitched rides on the light beams from stars, riding them toward their source and passing, on their way to other galaxies, burned-out worlds that were too close to their suns and frozen planets that were too far away. Into the core of Andromeda they dashed, into the black hole at its center, the beginning of the cosmic subway line, its terminus in another universe, wherein they emerged unscathed, clean and fresh and bathed in the radiance of love and light, and connected in both kiss and thought, still joined by reflection and perception in the mystical experience that we always refer to as attachment, devotion, kinship, warmth, affection, passion, and love. It was the circle of energy that came from being one and in love, and so it sustained itself perpetually. Out came their bonded spirits to review the world and all the aspects of nature. Spirits shining and glowing like vibrant glints and gleams among the facets of the diamond of life and love. And in this state they awoke somewhere in time, space, and energy, feeling relaxed and refreshed by their sleep, and blessed in serenity by the feeling of well-being. They say that the world is at its most beautiful in late April and May, as the various tree types and flowers bloom thereabouts, in turn, so as not to compete for the agents of pollination. On a day of deep, blushing pinks and unbelievable purples, Angelina and Peter drove the length of the mid-Hudson Valley, taking back roads and scenic riverside routes wherever possible. Starting near Germantown, they drove up the winding approach to Olana, the Persian mansion, its outside brick seemingly consisting of gigantic multicolored Legos. In each room, they found a painting by one of the Hudson River painters.
And we kissed as we noted the river below, and all of the Catskills peaks sharply rising beyond in a live painting of the Hudson River scenery. S1. After the tour, we gained respite from the morning wind at the warm brick wall behind the mansion.
A riverside breakfast at Claremont Park was next. Bacon, eggs, and sausages were broiled on the grill, the tasty scents floating on the mid-morning breeze. Soon they were driving down River Road, past Bard College and onward, through Red Hook and toward Rhinecliff, where they stopped for a while on the dock to see the ferry off. From here, they whizzed through Rhinebeck to the Vanderbilt Mansion in Hyde Park, where they rested for a time on the boulders near the shore, as the high tide brought the waves in and splashing against the rocks, cooling the lovers with a refreshing spray. Thus re-energized, they swept onward into Poughkeepsie, where they rested on a stone bench at the Pirate Canoe Club after walking the river bluffs on trails made long ago, the view being much the same now as it was back then. Walking down to float on some wooden piers, they noted the passing of the sloop Clearwater, and also some jet skiers, a strange mixture of old and new. A shady sheaf road took them past the bustle of the malls and into Bowdoin Park, where they cooked a chicken. The park was to become a portion of the proposed Greenway, which from here would connect to the Reese Wildlife Sanctuary. From Wappingers Village, they followed the Creek Side Road, taking the historic tour past the old estates and thence toward Chelsea. Where they stopped at the marina for a riverside kiss, then drove along Lilac Row, seeing views of Newburgh Bay, and swiftly past Castle Point and the Correctional Institute.
They then drove on through Beacon to the hallowed view of Storm King Mountain, where they rested on Sandy Beach, swimming in the warm currents, then ate a leisurely dinner at Breakneck Lodge.
From the restaurant, they beheld the entire vista of the Great Storm King and took note of the highway carved into its side, once the only roadway on the river's west side.
Crossing underneath the Hudson River was the Catskills Aqueduct that brought water by gravity alone, from the mountains all the way to New York City. In the river, where once only the steamships braved this narrowest part on their journeys into what was then the undiscovered country for most people. Sailboats wandered by, and pleasure crafts motored along, between bites of Peter's triple-decker club and Angelina's Western omelet, for which they had built up a tremendous appetite.
After dinner, we went back to the beach, put out some blankets, and lay there all night, loving, sleeping, writing, talking, and enjoying the sounds of the large waves, since here the river had to quickly rush its bulk of water through the narrow passage.
Towards mid-morning, Angelina and Peter packed their bags and crossed Bear Mountain Bridge, along with the Appalachian Trail. They wandered through the Bear Mountain Zoo, then drove up the mountain for a view back toward the Catskills. West Point was next, the plans of which were once almost handed over to the British by Benedict Arnold. The fortress-like buttresses shouldered their way up from the river shore, at once protecting and symbolizing duty, honor, and service to the country. Heading back north, they passed the old summer mansions of the railroad barons, the tycoons who eventually became environmentalists that went on to preserve much of the Hudson Highlands from encroachment by ore mining companies, and from the power plants that would have tapped the electric potential of water and gravity, and thereby scarred the great Storm King. Zion, and stopped to luxuriate and relax under and over the apple blossoms which had partially fallen, and so had formed a romantic cushion upon which lovers could lay, as if in the palm of heaven's hand, safe in a petal bed under a corolla sky. Angelina, wearing only a smile, was ripening and reddening, like buds that promised fruits from the apple tree in this Eden revisited. She removed Peter's clothes, and they were not afraid that anyone would see, for they were well into the orchard. He drank the dew from her catkin, and she did the same from his cattail, a catalyst that brought forth actions and reactions that built cathectically, like charged emotional ions attracted to the cathodes, reaching cathedral splendor in the airy and open heights and spaces in a living catechism of love's principles, catapulting them into the cataclysm of climax and beyond, into the serenity of catalepsy within which they catnapped, wavering between wake and sleep, in a neverland of connectedness brought to you by the letters. Driving once again, they emerged sometime later in Highland, where they ate at Mariner's Harbor, making friends with all the workers, and then drank a California lemonade and a Blue Lagoon well into the afternoon, the sun shining and sparkling on their skin. Traveling a bit into the future, they walked onto the old railroad bridge, which was to become a treed and grassy pedestrian walkway over the Hudson River, with a small museum house at one end. The afternoon found them driving past the many monasteries, nunneries, and wineries on the road to Kingston, sometimes stopping at the gift and antique shops. Turning west on Route 23, they could see the misty Catskills off in the distance. It began to rain, but it was a gentle, warm spring shower. Soon they were heading uphill in third gear along Route 23A, passing the 4 bridges that spanned the winding Caterskill Creek. Stopping near Bastion Falls, they followed the trail towards the Caterskill Falls that were further in, and here we slow down their journey a bit to join them in a hike. It had stopped sprinkling, but there was mist in the air and the tops of the mountains were shrouded. The creekside path to the waterfall was verdant, wet, mossy, and fertile.
We're in our element again, Angelina reminded.
And indeed it was. The creek was a torrent and the lower rapids were Sweetwater. Rainwater was coming down the mountainside and crossing the trail in rivulets that sought out the stream. It was slippery in spots, so they held each other as they crossed between huge boulders strewn about like giants' playthings. Water from the trees dripped on them as they walked, and mist rising from the creek drifted in small, wispy clouds that settled in all around them. S2.
It's everywhere, Peter. S1, water.
Caterskill Falls was stunning, with a first fall of about 175 feet to a ledge pool, then another 90-foot fall to the ground. A blanket of sweetness and serenity crept over them as they gazed in wonderment at yet another scene rendered by nature's painters. They made camp behind a fallen tree and ate a snack of cherries and bananas. 20,000 gallons of water were coming over the falls every second, for it had rained very heavily to the north. The roar of the water, though loud, was reassuring and comforting. And, as they nodded in appreciation of it, the wildflowers nodded their wet, drooping heads in return. Soft breezes came and went, and all seemed right with the world on this extended Memorial Day weekend. She didn't answer, for they weren't speaking much in this cathedral-like atmosphere, and so they became relatively silent again, in reverence for the grandeur of it all. Peter looked into Angelina's wild, wet eyes, the many droplets dripping down her face, and she looked back into his eyes and deep into his soul. 1,000 memories flew by in an instant, of all the places they had traveled to in space and time. Impressions poured forth from their souls, passing directly into the other's spirit, bypassing mind, manner, and sense.
Angelina, said Peter at last, I see a friend and partner who understands the love and adventure of this day and the wonderful moisture of this scene. I've never seen anyone enjoy wetness so thoroughly. Look at you. You're soaked from head to toe from the spray of the waterfall.
I never complain about messing up my hair or about anything like that. I revel in my drenching, with a joy that says I'm alive on this earth.
Her shoes were squeaking, and indeed her hair would have to be restyled. Her dress was hanging in a mass of wrinkles, her blouse was saturated to the skin, and her knees were caked with red clay from climbing the steep banks where they had to detour around a washed-out section of the trail.
You're so stimulating, he added, and you're so adventurous.
Look at you, you're quite a mess yourself.
You certainly live close to the edge. There isn't much in life that you miss.
I expect a lot from life.
And we're here to give it to each other, S2, me too.
Live it, Peter, and love it. That's our motto.
In between our eternal sleeps within the womb and the tomb, there is a lovely dream called life, in which roses grow but wither soon a bloom.
Love whispers wake and live, Peter. Where do we get these sayings anyway?
They just come to us.
With this statement, Angelina undid Peter's belt and reached inside. Her blouse seemed to fall off into Peter's hands as he cupped her braless breasts. His lubrication was flowing, and several times he had to still her hand in order to control his excitement. She was a quivering mass of moans as they moved toward the waterfall, where they kissed underneath one of its dousing offshoots. They placed their clothes in a flowery glade and lay on them. Their bodies and spirits merged as Peter plunged into the deep pool of joy, as Angelina swam and heaved underneath. Eons later, he planted his seeds in her flower garden, wherein tulips denoted truth, roses meant beauty, and lilies represented goodness, the three aspects of love. In late afternoon, Peter and Angelina rented a room in the ghostly Catskills mountain house and then walked toward the overlook. The sweet-scented manuscript of their relationship now opened to a most delicious page on which they lived ideally in a perfect state, delicately balanced so as to forever prolong that magic hour between day and night that can often pass too quickly for a couple.
Soft breezes blew the edges of the page of the story that we were living.
It felt like every moment was crafted just for us, didn't it?
They sat on a grassy knoll at the edge of a cliff that overlooked the river valley and the waterfall where they'd been earlier. The view was breathtaking, and of course any fall would have been death-taking. Their eyes swept in the vista, and it was almost too much for the brain to take in, for this was an unusual perspective. They were about 3,000 feet up, on a cliff edge, facing a sheer drop. The landscape of farmlands, towns, and lakes stretched on toward Connecticut. What looked like grass and bushes below were actually treetops.
Here we slowly ate our dinner, and again we would look up and out over the never-ending distance.
And the immensity of it all was always refreshingly overwhelming.
After dinner, they lay face to face on a large rounded rock, a blanket cushioning them.
They drew closer to each other until there wasn't any closer, and soon they became one with each other as well as with the rock and with the entire mountain too.
They witnessed a magic moment that was seldom observed, the exact moment when spring met the summer and caressed him with her breezes and touched him with her kisses, awakening him with her last dying breath, as she unfolded her petals and became the rose, the flower that heralds the summer season.
Peter melted against me, dissolved by love as we became one mind, one soul, one heart, and one body.
Surrounded on all sides by our unified being, we were about, around, next to, and within each other.
It was a unity, to each a perfect second self, each a mirroring of the other soul. I'm writing this in the morning half light because that's the time of our relationship. Twilight is the only time when the night and day can meet each other and kiss, and this is the page to which our book is open.
This is the time that we can glimpse Camelot and live in our own ideal world. We confide in each other, we live in each other, we live in a perpetual sunrise. S2, we don't fight, we don't even argue.
It is always morning and the world is always bright and fresh.
And I wrote to and read back, when I was in your soul, I felt the shadow of divine beauty itself.
I had joined with you, I saw your inner flame and drew closer to it until it was bright and all-consuming.
All of my senses within and without had combined into a joy which was quite beyond sense.
And that's where we live, in that soulful dimension where we will ever snuggle by our inner fire.
By evening, they had crossed the Rip Van Winkle Bridge into Germantown, the trip completed in summer that had begun in spring. By nightfall, they were home, trying to count the stars. After a long holiday weekend, Peter returned to the corporation and immediately sensed a shift in the air. The management, it seemed, was having second thoughts about their recent tactics, scaring the employees with the threat of ranking them, terminating the bottom 10%, and pushing too many into early retirement. The company had seen so many retirements that morale plummeted among those who remained. They found themselves short-handed, pushed to their limits. The corporation had been cutting staff merely to hit a nationwide reduction target, without realizing that locally they were always understaffed. Now, with the local division operating as its own business unit, perhaps they could balance an increase in headcount with increased profits. However, the damage to the company and employee morale had been severe.
Merely apologizing wasn't going to cut it. Compensation for the employees and retribution towards the management were deemed necessary. Consequently, heads rolled. The head of personnel was fired, the CEO was sacked, and all employees received an 8% bonus along with an extra month off. Thanks to these changes, Peter enjoyed many carefree summer days, choosing only the days of perfect weather to take off, and working only when it was too hot to venture outside.
After getting his work to a certain stable point, Peter headed out for an extended stay in the cabin where he lived and loved with Angelina. There they could relax and perhaps write a book called The Answer Book, part of a self-help series. They would also read and play and explore the summer woods, reveling in nature and life and all that was wonderful on this earth. After fixing up their bicycles, they rode the old paths behind the farm, entering lands where no one had been for a century. They passed old sugar maple barrels, ghostly summer camps, and an old rusted stagecoach. They found an old swimming hole with its tire swing still intact, and so they swung out over and into the cool, clear water. In the late afternoon, there was tennis on the village courts.
Peter, our lovemaking is a lot like our tennis. It is at times very physical, deep ground strokes.
Or even violent, like a crunching overhead.
I love it that way.
Or as gentle and delicate as a touch volley or a deft drop shot.
They walked toward the tennis courts, knowing that the game was going to be as exciting as the lovemaking that would follow. For tennis was a sort of foreplay for love. Peter opened a new can of balls. S2.
That way too.
That's a sweet sound, Peter.
Only the best for us.
As she stood there, her sunny brown legs seemed to go on forever, and thus drew attention to the place of their convergence. Her breasts peeked out and invited Peter's glimpse. Their tennis-playing styles were very different. She was very steady and was quite comfortable hitting ground strokes from the baseline. He tended to close into the net at every opportunity to volley her blistering shots. The contrast made for very interesting matches, as every point soon reached the stage of do or die. The match began.
Her serves came in flat and deep, making it hard for him to get his racket under them, so he just concentrated on getting them back.
She immediately pinned him behind the baseline and moved the ball from side to side. They carefully watched the motion and direction of the other's racket in order to get a clue as to where the next shot was going to land, and the spin, if any, on the ball. And so it went. Sweat was dripping onto Peter's lips, and during the odd game break, Angelina kissed it away.
I love you, and I love this day, and I love this game.
I love you very much, and I love the feel of the sun on my skin and the feel of the ball on my racket. What's the score? How come we're so crazy about hitting a fuzzy yellow ball over some netting with a bunch of string laced from catgut? S1. Love, love.
It's some kind of drug, a wonderfully healthy drug.
As we are to each other.
Addict me, please.
Wait until I get my hands on you when we get back.
It soon got too dark to play, and so they headed back, hot, heated, and hepped up, to their sandstone farmhouse. He helped her out of her clothes in the backyard as she lay on the picnic table, her chest still heaving with the exertion, the droplets of sweat running all over and between her breasts.
I can see your heart beating.
I can see your blood pumping.
She wrapped her thighs around him for a long while. Then they entered a small pond and soothed their tired muscles. It was much like wearing a cool ice pack. They felt cool, refreshed, and sleepy. Finally, hunger called, and they lit the charcoal and cooked chicken and fish. They next drank wine and drifted along on its pleasantness.
Do you have new balls? Then rush to my net and send a stroke up my middle. S1, I do.
She twirled his racket handle and gave him a preview of the coming attractions. He tasted her again, returning the favor. He straddled her pomegranates, putting his strokes all over and around them and between them as she pressed on them from each side. After volleying back and forth, his blood surging, he entered her court, and they played mixed singles, then doubles, with tiebreakers, good calls, and angles from side to side. She touched him all around with her fingernails, especially the insides of his thighs, and he scratched her back, exciting her further. After 5 sets, they finished the exhilarating match with an orgasmic cheer, and then lay happily exhausted in the arena of unending love. S1, my pleasure. In an enchanting quest for the elusive hidden lake, Peter and Angelina set their sights on a mysterious journey.
Sighting the hidden lake.
Sighting the hidden lake.
The endless summer vacation went on, and they continued to work on their garden and their relationship. The corporation was just a memory now, with Peter enjoying a 2-month vacation with Angelina. They got up at 5 a.m. each day with the sun, singing like lovebirds, and had breakfast out in the yard with the roaming deer that fed there at dawn and dusk.
Let's look for the hidden lake today, Peter. It's supposed to be out there somewhere, although it may be difficult to find since it's enclosed on all sides. It's a glacial mountaintop lake.
I only know of its general direction.
But no one knows exactly where it is? That's very mysterious.
No one knows. It comes and goes, living and drying at the whims of plenty and drought.
And perhaps from any underground springs. It wasn't even there when they last mapped the area.
We'll have to locate it from the air so that we have some idea where it is, so we don't wander endlessly for weeks searching for it. There's a balloon festival at the airport. We could get a ride in one or even rent one. S2 from an airplane?
Let's do it. I love balloons.
He did so, and the skyship rose heavenward with a great roar. Fire the burner.
Yes, a clue, a faint path that can only be seen from the air.
But the wind is blowing us the wrong way, and anyway, we're still too low to see far enough, she said. Let's go higher and try to find a crosswind going in our direction. And toward those hills is a trail we've never walked on, and the mountains beyond. The lake is in that direction. There's our farmhouse, he said, and the cemetery.
So the stone wall can guide us if we lose the trail. Look, the path comes out along the stone wall on the other side of the forest.
But the wind is blowing us the wrong way, and anyway, we're still too low to see far enough, she said. Let's go higher and try to find a crosswind going in our direction.
He did so, and the skyship rose heavenward with a great roar. S1, fire the burner.
Look, the path comes out along the stone wall on the other side of the forest.
So the stone wall can guide us if we lose the trail.
We have the right wind now. Maintain this altitude.
Aye, aye, Captain, he said.
The songs of larks rose in the air to meet them and pierced the stillness of the sky.
We must have been sea creatures in one of our prior lives. We are always drawn to water, aren't we? She offered.
We've had many previous lives together, haven't we?
Yes, and they've all been coming back to me. It's so blue, who would ever expect a lake up on top of a mountain? S2, to me too.
Look, at the third peak, she exclaimed.
It's just beyond the slope of purple heather.
We can take the pass between the first two peaks. There's a wide valley floor.
And it has a stream through it.
A day's walk at most.
How do we get this dirigible down, he wondered aloud.
Just let it cool and float down gently, although I must say that it seems like you've flown before.
It seems like I have, that I know how, but I can't remember when.
They descended and just barely cleared the road as the startled drivers looked up at them. They landed somewhat heavily on the edge of the airfield.
Good to be back down to earth, they both agreed.
They soon set out for the hidden lake, traveling light, bringing only fruits and nuts.
The old cemetery loomed ahead. They entered, hoping to find the faint path to the lake.
Startled, Peter stopped at a twin set of tombstones.
The old cemetery loomed ahead. They entered, hoping to find the faint path to the lake.
Startled, Peter stopped at a twin set of tombstones. What is it? Cried Angelina.
Read it, answered Peter.
1676, 1759. Here lie Peter and Angelina, and in your heart and mine, their earthly apples left behind, but not their spirits. For their love was so strong that it could never die, but blossoms again and again, somewhere in time.
I've always felt that I've known and loved you before, she realized.
Yes, I know it too.
Our love is so pure and true that our spirits live on and reincarnate from time to time, our passion capable of drawing us together in loving enchantment, even from afar.
I especially enjoy our latest incarnation.
The embodiment is most exhilarating.
Sure enough, they found a faintly lettered gravestone not too far from the first that read, in small letters that were already fading.
1790, 1872. Here together lie Broader Peter and Senior Angelina, monk and holy nun, partner and paramour. As book illuminators and editors, they wrote and lived life's loving scene.
At the edge of the woodlands stood the brave sentinels of the bugle flowers, announcing by their call the entrance of the lovers into the woods. Once inside, they drank dew from the buttercup flowers, that sparkling potion of lively refreshment. It's going to be a good day. The scarlet pimpernels have unfolded their flowers, he observed.
They are the poor man's weather glass. We must have learned all about the flowers in another life. Flowers had a language of their own in Victorian days. The heat of noon pressed down on them, and so they gained relief in a cool green bower of jasmines. They followed the faint path, sometimes losing it, but soon finding it again by predicting the way, and later on, by finding the stone wall. It was hard going, for the trail was ever rising uphill through shady and scrubby places.
Hours later, after ascending through the verdant valley and hearing many a chanting bird, they arrived at the mid-base of the mountain. Here they saw great herds of snapdragons, some of which they opened with a pinch at the right spot, not even remembering where they'd learned the trick. And two, they saw vermilion red geraniums growing wild in countless numbers. They passed a tangle of honeysuckle mounted on high, the air filled with its sweetness by unseen fairies blowing the fragrance through the honey trumpets. Further along, woodbine scented the air with its pure coolness as it climbed toward the sky. They could hear the chimes of the bluebells, those heralds of the dim and dewy dusk, and the dance and song of evening knells. Elfin music tinkling in fairy festivals. A duck lifted into flight, hinting that the lake was very near. They quickly passed through some bushes of rare white periwinkles, long thought to be extinct, and there before them lay the crystal blue lake that was secreted atop the mountain. Overheated from the strenuous hike, they soon removed and threw aside their clothes, then plunged into the cool depths of the blue lake, and remained underwater a while to get an all-around zingy chill. As they emerged and headed toward shore, the water droplets ran down their bodies and made a trail behind them.
Overheated from the strenuous hike, we soon removed and threw aside our clothes, then plunged into the cool depths of the blue lake and remained underwater a while to get an all-around zingy chill.
As we emerged and headed toward shore, the water droplets ran down our bodies and made a trail behind us. I went straight for Peter's vital area, without even a kiss beforehand, for a kiss was the most intimate act and had to be built up to. I enjoyed his fullness fully, unwanting to give it up, even briefly.
I think I've caught a fish. It's a lively one and it won't let go.
We'll see how much play there is in your pole.
I'm going swimming in you.
The water's warm and deep.
I dove headfirst into her underground pool, a lagoon fed by her boundless, gushing spring of enthusiasm and passion, as she continued to feast on my bait, a lively serpent snaking its way all around. How we continued this magic we never knew, but it never failed. It was the holy grail of sensuality and sexuality for me to be at the peak of excitement and still continually feel the utmost sensation without exploding. And although practice helps to some degree, it was more than that. Truly a magical enchantment that allowed the seemingly paradoxical state of infinite excitement to coexist with infinite duration. He literally sizzled as he entered her on the lake shore, the waves coming up to lap their feet.
Now I had grown from a fish into a mermaid, and he into an Argonaut captivated by my song. Water was our element, everyone's actually, since we are born in water. Now and then we would reach down and splash liquids all over our bodies.
Finally they kissed, the apex of intimacy, and the kisses were fast and hard and wandered all over their lips in a frenzy of emotion out of control.
These sentiments consuming the entire interval of twilight until the ardor became larger than both of them, swallowing them up with its immeasurable wealth.
Daylight, extended by the mountainous height, finally fell into darkness all around us as again and again we slipped in and out of each other's being.
And ultimately merged into one heart, soul, mind, and body, and with our last ounce of energy, rolled into the shallow water and slept.
In his dreams, Peter thought, we can have high-quality virtual reality for free. There's no need to go off to a multimedia arcade spending a fortune on a virtual reality helmet, gloves and wires to experience time and space-limited hollow scenes of cartoon-level quality. There is a free method of not only viewing high-quality virtual reality, but also of movie scripting all the scenes, scenery, and character actions instantaneously. Do we need a Cray mainframe computer or a Hollywood studio to do it? No, it's free and simple, and you can do it every day. Enjoying high-quality graphics that are indistinguishable from reality, with deep emotions thrown in, to boot. When I lay down to sleep, I had sent the following message on ahead to my dream self, etching it into the sands of unconsciousness by repeating it over and over hundreds of times. It is only a dream, so be aware, enjoy it, control it. Sleep's drowsy circles had drawn ever closer, soon closing to a point through which I emerged on the other side. Deeper waves of slumber rose and fell across the sands, eroding the directives written there. And yet, as I had started to dream, some faint echoing thought of that message from the heretofore rang as a dim chime. And so reminded, I became aware that I was dreaming, and that I could enjoy it, even control it. The insight was unbelievable at first, but it helped that I was flying 10 feet off of the ground, and therefore disbelief soon surrendered to amazement. I inspected the dreams, being careful not to become so alert that it would cause my waking. The colors were true and glorious, 24-bit color at least. All was so clear. Nothing was hazy, as in a dream's remembrance. All the players acted in character. One even told funny jokes. Best of all, my emotions were still felt deeply, for I still felt that I was really living through it, even though I knew it was a dream. Once I picked up a book in my dreams, although the images were reversed. So, totally in control, I conjured up a mirror, reflected the words, and read a most astounding book entitled Simply Amazing. But the nagging question is, who authored it? Make the background music romantic. Use a male voice with a southern accent for the narrator. Use a male voice with a Californian accent for speaker 1. Use a female voice with a Californian accent for speaker 2. Use the best audio available.
They awoke a few hours later, still afloat with ecstasy, dried themselves off, built a small fire, then lay on a beach towel near the water as the energies of love were again asking to be quenched. The heat from the fire warmed the cool night, and so I removed my downy vest and used it as a pillow.
They slowly aroused each other in a passionate crescendo as the evensong rose all around them. I was soon straddling Peter, hovering in the air above him, my knees and hands supporting me and settling into the hollows that I'd carved in the sand. Peter lay on his back, looking up at me and into the starry night where endless fires burned. I was now the huntress, reigning over my willing prey, and I lowered down on my elbows and brought my lips to within kissing distance, my ripeness brushing lightly against his chest.
The kisses were full and moist, then playful and finally lingering. I harvested her bosoms as they hung in their fullness like fruit, and she directed the lovemaking as quickly or as slowly as her passion desired. Angelina turned her head this way and that so that I could kiss her ear to ear, as all the while her soft hair was brushing my cheeks.
I soon reached down and released his love arrow from its confines as he massaged my buttocks. But he didn't pull me down onto him, for this was my move, and there was yet much magic to be enjoyed in that airy space of attraction between the sword and the scabbard.
I reached under her to fan her quick sparks into flame, and after some minutes of this, her lips became engorged and dripped hot rain down upon my manhood.
Several times my body's tensions were swept away in waves of well-being. Balancing on one hand, I reached for his stiff wick, to which I would pass my fire, and there I found the seepage of love's juices waiting to burst forth. I played it against my button of desire to set the final fuse aglow.
Soon her pulsating well of flame devoured wick and wax, surrounding it with heat and comfort beyond belief.
Finally, with a last surge of activity that we both knew would take us beyond the point of no return, we allowed the sword and scabbard to taste the powder in the explosions of passion's tremendous energies revealed.
Still awash with waves of contentment, we pulled a blanket over us and drifted into the calm sleep that only lovers know. A thousand points of light yet stabbed the dome of night as we awoke before dawn.
The ever-present sound of the waves soothed our already trouble-free souls to a point where we could commingle with the stars, and thus freed, we could sense the earth floating in space, rolling along like a blue-green marble.
We witnessed a rare sight, the setting of the full moon, a touching, if somewhat melancholy sight, as the queen of the night sunk into the west and gave off her own dim version of twilight.
The zodiacal lights sprung into their western being, now that the sky was completely dark, and over in the east, false dawn came and went as the birds slept soundly, except for our pet crow, which dropped out of the night as if conjured from black velvet. Peter, the crow, our crow. Of course, it's the creature who enchants us. It's the nightingale transformed, and it is perhaps even reincarnated with us in each of our instantiations.
Yes, it's somehow a magic bird.
Maybe it belonged to Merlin a long time ago.
Perhaps it really is Omar Khayyam's famous bird of time.
Like the one in the magic book that we saved from the burning monastery in the 1800s when I was a holy nun and you a saintly monk. And when we fell in love, the book spoke to us and sent us on a quest to find out the name of the rose.
I remember it well now.
Yes, we wrote all about it in Life, Love, and Being fumes from ancient times.
We were as the rose.
Yes, although the flowers that once had blown forever died.
But our spirits lived on, finding life in new flowers.
In this new and wonderful embodiment,
Because our love had so much energy.
that the energy became matter again.
Angelina said, "Let me tell you about our true colors, our spirits." I wrote it down. We are the eternal smile of being, the joy of the universe's creation. In us, the cosmos has come alive and has evolved into our consciousness from primordial matter and energy. We have arrived. We are the cosmos itself. We are the universe, life from stardust. We live but for one of eternity's heartbeats, borrowing life from death for just a while. All that we are we owe to time, death, and stars. Truly from the stars cometh our help, and much more. The stars are the creators of matter and energy. Within a star's heart, matter transforms itself and gives energy. This is why the stars shine. Death is the ultimate evaluator and the director of all evolutionary progress. Over eons upon eons, death selects the wise from the silly. Death chooses the useful from the useless, but it takes time. It is this long yardstick that sticks in our throat when we try to contemplate it. For what seemed like forever, our sleepless spirits have waited to catch light, life, and delight from heaven's smile. Finally, we are so lucky, and we live. We stand atop the pinnacle of nature's tireless toil, which has at last brought forth our souls from that black and endless eternal deep. What a joy to be! Blake said, "In what far and fiery depths of space burnt the fire of your spirit? In what distant stars was born the gleam in your eye? Know it well, for one day death will ask you, what did you do all of your life?" Our mind and senses interpret and unweave the one reality into the colors and sensations of the phenomenal world. We can become either rainbows or ugly stains. Our minds, like Shelley's prisms of many-colored glass, strain this white radiance of eternity into our life until death tramples us, and back we go to stardust after relentless time has wasted us away. Yes, our creators of time, death, and stardust must also write our epitaph. They devour us in order to return that life dream which was lent to us. But here we are now, and perhaps we come to know that the simpler things in life are still the best. A glass of water from the well in the morning, to love, laugh, and sing with family and friends. And so we live out our lives with honor and love, kindness and generosity. These are our true colors. Life for the sake of life. Good for good's sake. The ultimate humility is, I think, for us to realize that we are no more than electrochemical organisms, that we too are part of nature. Are we quite lucky and fancy organisms? Oh yes. Are we specially created by a master? Oh no. We are the embodiment of the cosmos and are ever the results of the natural laws of physics and chemistry. Death may be forever, but man, with his exaggerated view of self-importance and not wishing to see a final end to his glorious life, and I can hardly blame him, desperately grasps for immortality's promise. For me, I will continue to catch life's joy and smile, and will bathe in the light of its constant sunrise. On my last night on this earth, I will not be haunted by regret when the sleep of death comes to take me to corruption's dim dwelling place, for I will know that I lived for color and smile.
And what of the stars?
They remain as eternity's love lamps, representing our good works and deeds, which even the fathomless night cannot quench. Perhaps one day, at the end of forever, the stars too will die and grow cold when time conquers all. But as long as they live, they will shine and radiate the hues that paint the colors of our ashes, reborn again on the phoenix wings of time.
I like that very much, said Peter. I'll tell you a story about outer space. I own infinite wealth. Ever wonder just how rich you could be, laying claim to gold, silver, jewels, and gems owned by no one? You can, anytime.
At night, Peter opens up the heavens vault, his safety deposit box of valuable stars, one of whose planets contains all his wealth.
There are billions of stars, quite enough for everyone, really, but can one really own a star? Yes, if it is one's favorite star. Mine is Betelgeuse in Orion, a large dying red giant. Although it has already expanded into the orbits of its first two planets, I own the fourth planet, one that no one else has ever claimed, and I'm planning to homestead there someday. The planet, hereby named Peter, contains unlimited amounts of gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, and many other rare crystals, and it's all his now. For 6 months of the year, my favorite star is hidden, but in early autumn, if I stay up late, I can see Orion rising, his shining sword of nebulas gleaming in the black sky, and Blue Rigel, a near favorite, sparkling on his boot, but it's Betelgeuse on his shoulder that I really love. Although he is looking from Earth, Peter feels no less out in space than any other star. Yes, we are all far out, in fact, relatively speaking, from the galactic center, being in the middle of one of the spiral arms of the Milky Way. Anyway, I've chosen to leave my infinite wealth right there on the planet, since at least I know where it is. If I brought it here, someone might try to steal it.
To get through the other 6 months of the year, Peter has chosen Orange Arcturus in the Scorpion, which, due to ancient disputes and treaties, can never again be in the same sky with Orion the Hunter, having in fact once bitten him. Orion still hunts him, but of course can never catch him.
I own many favorite stars actually, but I sometimes wonder while enjoying the serenity of these deep, dark nights if in fact they haven't come to own me.
I'll tell you about some riches that I too could have had. Once I had acres of gold, but I left it there.
Angelina found the forest of original growth.
What would it be like to stumble across lands that no one else had ever been to? And how could one know that? After reading Sir Conan Doyle's Lost World, about dinosaurs on a sealed-off plateau of a volcano, I wondered if there were any more undiscovered places.
So while at the Earth Summit in Rio last month, Angelina forayed into the uncharted regions of Brazil, having chosen from a map the most desolate and remotest area.
After various vaccinations and preparations, I trucked my one-person helicopter to the last way station, loaded the extra gas tanks onto it, and flew into the heart of darkness, gliding down onto a field just as the gas ran out.
From here she walked for tens of miles, always taking the most difficult path whenever there was a choice. This would ensure that she could end up in some unvisited, hard-to-get-at region.
After several hundred or so of these improbable choices, I came across acres and acres of ladies' slippers flowers, very rare flowers that usually only appeared in small bunches, growing only in conjunction with a rare fungus, and even then, usually get picked.
She then, after taking one last really difficult turn, discovered entire fields of flowers long thought to be extinct.
There were Eve's blossoms, not seen for thousands of years, historically valued for their life-extending elixir, as well as the original lost strain of Pearly Everlasting, the flower that never dies. And so I suspected that I might be in virgin territory.
How would she know? Well, for one, there were no paths, for even animals and their hunters had either long left or had never been here. Also, the flower colors were not like any that she had ever seen before. Not new colors, mind you, but just, well, colors of different intensities and hues that were not thought to exist in nature.
I saw true blue roses, legendary no more. I had chanced upon a land of strange rainbows of elfin-hued flowers, red delphiniums, black tulips, orange fuchsias, white marigolds, bronze grass, yellow violets, and Adam's apple, now growing from the ground.
Was this the original forest, the Garden of Eden? Was she the first to return?
And then I knew that it was, and I was, for there, right in front of me, was a field of thousands upon thousands of undisturbed golden nuggets on the forest floor. Surely no one had ever been here, at least not for a long, long time. I reached up and put Eden's apple back on the tree.
That's fabulous.
Some might even take it as an exaggeration, but I know that it's true.
I have another story, said Peter, about the three heavenly things on earth. Whether by accident or by design, not many heavenly things remain on earth. I suggest just three flowers, love and dreams. A fourth, elfin creatures, is perhaps only a pleasant speculation on near heavenly beings that for some reason exist in the half-light scenes of our imagination. Had flowers never appeared on earth, could anyone even have conceived of them? Or say, if the natural world was all green or had no color, colors are mostly in the flowers, would there have been a need for us even to be cognizant of colors? More than anything else on earth, flowers have universal appeal, being picked, grown, presented, used for medications, and just plain admired as beautiful by everyone. Some think that flowers were God's going away present to Eve as she departed the Garden of Eden, as shown in my epic poem, Flora Symbolica. The second heavenly thing on earth, night dreams during sleep, shows that we really don't need eyes to see. An amazing insight in itself. Actually, all reality takes place in the mind's eye. It just looks like it's out there, but is projected as such. Dreams, whatever their ultimate purpose, provide an all-night cable TV channel on which we can put on almost any show that we choose. Or we can just simply lay back and discover what's on the mind, if we can read past the static. Finally, love, which is perhaps the greatest of the heavenly things on earth, since it is the greatest feeling on earth. Would life even be worth living without affection, romance, passion, and loving, I wonder? And is there any excuse not to seek it out? Though many other heavenly things were perhaps removed from the earth when we were cast out of the garden, love, dreams, and flowers were allowed to remain, lent by us forever from some other dimension.
I'll tell you what I think of love, the greatest of all heavenly things, replied Angelina. Love is the finest refreshment of mortal life, providing a glimpse into the heavenly state, a vision which, if maintained, can last well beyond the initial perception and for all of one's life. So I say that any time not spent on love is time squandered in absolute waste, that if one is idling, not loving, or God forbid hating, then life is a wasting. For love is the greatest experience on earth, and so I have often sought it out, found it, received it, given it, and lived it as life's one great happiness, for there is no other joy that compares, love being the truth of all truths. Who has not forgotten that first kiss and the magic that attended it? No one, for first love touches one deeply and forever. People newly in love glow for weeks on end. There is nothing like love, although strangely some do not actively seek it out, perhaps for fear of rejection. But even love's worst pain is sweeter by far than any other pleasure. There is indeed no contest, and to love and lose is second only to loving and triumph. Not merely just a pleasure, love refreshes, creates, invigorates, and provides sustenance of spirit and life itself. Without love, there is no life, at least none worth living. When you give up on love, you begin to die. Love knows no laws or restrictions, for mutual passion is a law unto itself. Love is the cure-all, both for those who receive it and for those who give it. The one tragedy in life is not death, but that some people do not love, aye, nor do they live, for the fear of the one is fear of the other. So by all means, if you love someone, go to them and tell them so. It is said that the loving are the daring, perhaps because they seek the ultimate adventure, often risking all for that which lies far and above the commonplace, that vision into paradise. Imagination weaves a fairy tale of love and romance, and the mind that is alive soon brings forth the phantasm into reality. Placing our very life and happiness in another through love is the greatest gift one can give, for it is the gift of oneself. Unconditional love is a true gift, one without strings attached, one without any motive for gain in return. Oh, of course we are human, and often love for the sake of being loved in return, and this is not in itself wrong. But when one loves for no other reason than for the sake of generosity and loving, then this is a saintly type of love which is above all the other kinds. True love loves people for what they are, not for their qualities in particular, but for the person. It's not that we love someone because we need them, for this is quite immature, but that we need someone because we love them. It is, you see, love that is the origin. Love begets love, and love in turn begets more love, and so on, making us even more loving to others, until heaven is indeed brought down to earth. Real love is its own reward. Identity is not lost in love, for true lovers do not sit looking only into each other's heart, but rather look outward, each in the same direction. It is a seeming violation of arithmetic that in love the two become much greater than 1 + 1, and that the two, nevertheless, do not become one, but remain as two, yet still share the same vibration in their souls. It also seems to be a paradox that love, when divided, is not at all diminished, but that each individual love multiplies to exceed the lot. One can never run out of love. It is a miser indeed who withholds love from a capacity that is boundless. Hoard not that which can be given. Give love, and even more love comes back full circle to you. What a joy it is to experience life's wonders with someone you love. Oh, walks and plays, and dinners are great enough pleasures when taken alone, but note how much better they are when you have someone to share them with. Another bonus of love is that, with it behind your actions, you may soon find yourself doing the impossible, as love's inspiration carries you along through any kind of difficulty. For me, it was an inspiration to draw and write. Love and a kind heart are much alike, and one is equivalent to the other. Love being a triumvirate of truth, beauty, and goodness blended into one great purity. We do not merely love, we are love. We do not create, we are creation itself. We don't just live, we are life. There are many forms and faces of love, such as brotherly, sisterly, motherly, fatherly, romantic, spiritual, professional, and physical. And it often depends much upon the circumstance which one is the most appropriate form to give to a particular person. But, in all of the above forms of love, there is much more that could be given.
I'll tell you the greatest earthly thing, adventure. Boredom and dull routine have little place, if any, in a life, and it is only by one's own laziness that they are allowed to exist at all, languishing nearby on the doorstep, as it were, as uninvited guests, as all the while terrible complaints are hurled against them. I'm bored, we say, half-heartedly hoping that some new entertainment will appear out of the blue and carry us away from a dreary, commonplace existence, perhaps into a fairy tale. So, adventure calls constantly to us as a cure for the blahs, for routine dulls the senses. Even the greatest music soon begins to fall unheard on our ears and gradually degenerates into that same old song. Although breaking the chains of routine often requires a great burst of energy, adventure can become self-sustaining once the seeds have been planted. Yes, initially some hard work must be applied, since adventuring is not normal, free, and easy in this world. But remember that before all realized realities must come the dream, the creative vision, the attitude, and the outlook that will bring adventure to life. Even before the dream comes the yearning, though it's dim at first, faintly glowing as a phantasm in a fleeting daydream struggling to maintain its shape before it fades into the noise of day. As these shadows pass over the adventurous mind, the vision must be enhanced and then steadily pursued until it, at last, becomes three-dimensional and real. We often look back later, quite amazed at the wonders that we have wrought, but we had the vision. The rewards of adventure are many. Stimulation, experience, and growth are practical results, but foremost comes joy, exhilaration, and thrill. The feeling of being alive. Who has not known the adventure of walking to school alongside a stream, dallying here and there, then crossing over the water on a log, nearly slipping off but catching oneself at the last instant while skipping a heartbeat? Who has not known the electricity of the first kiss at summer camp? Or of the reading or writing of a great poem or story while basking warm and cozy in winter sunshine, or the thrill of a job well done? If we no longer know such things, then perhaps now is the time to stop worrying about getting one's hair messed up. It's all a matter of style, purpose, and vision. To plant the seeds of adventure, one must seek out the uncommon, the unusual situation, the exotic, even in one's own backyard, looking for the odd character. Although certainly not those who are unhealthy, the pleasantly eccentric, by today's staid standards. The person willing to try just about anything that isn't illegal. The offbeat but upbeat person, the optimist, the exciting prospect, the person with those excitingly wonderful and harmless character defects. And so it is that once you find it, adventure begets more adventure, for ideas from all over soon begin to interact and build until a person rises above mere existence and really lives. Oh, I've had many adventures myself, from romance in the South Seas to mysterious intrigue in the villages of France. But travel and romance are only a general means to adventure. There are many more, mostly personal, for it depends on what you want from life. Adventure can be had in one's own village. Of course, some adventures entail a minor amount of risk-taking and rule-breaking, for that which is often uncommon is often the most extraordinary, and therefore must draw undue attention from those in the straight world. But I ask you, does not the element of danger often greatly heighten the excitement? Who has not, in the throes of spring fever, slyly disappeared from the place of employment on some exciting romantic mission and found adventure in that forbidden quest? Yes, adventure is lived in that delightful middle state in which one is neither drunk nor sober, nor ever totally reckless, but ever balancing excitement with responsibility, each paying for the other, as we walk the thin line between foolishness and adventure, the log across the creek. So I say to some of you, prime the pump, seek out adventure, embrace it. Use your emotions, get up out of your chair and into the arena. Open up and invite adventure in. Give it, take it, and live life with a reasonable passion and with a passionate reason, for adventure can even become a commonplace situation that one can tolerate. Our greatest adventure is living life and writing about it in this book, an art. Tell me about writing, Peter. Artists create after living and feeling, whether it be for real or accomplished only in their minds and dreams. Although this artistry too is living and self-sustaining, although secondary as art becomes its own reward, that is, the complete satisfaction is in the creative act itself. The sharing or selling of it either comes later or is not necessary. Just give it away. Lord Byron once wrote, "'Tis to create, and in creating live a being more intense." Artistry, as in our writing and illustration, is inspired by and is intertwined with living a being more intense. If our dreams inspire living, then our living inspires more dreams, including the writing of them and the living of them. When I wrote Star Trek: The Death Wave, I truly felt that I was out in space. I wrote The Last Night's Almanac when I had a terrible flu, but while writing it felt fine, not even realizing that I was sick, being transported in time and space to the Dark Ages. Sometimes one needs to accumulate experiences, including reading, in order to write. Mostly for me, ideas come only when they may, after some subconscious maturation process, the poems and novels then nearly writing themselves. My writing can never be done on demand. The art is the satisfaction. The selling of it for peanuts comes only out of the unconditional love of sharing it. We all contribute to the world what we do best. If that happens to be telling jokes, then that's what we give away for free. Otherwise, in our case, writing and art. In most areas of my writing, especially in the universal wisdom poems, I must live the ideas first, in order to prove that the advice can be written down and dispensed. Same for romance or self-help. As for me, it would not be fair to write something that really couldn't happen. In most of my novels, I try to show for inspiration how good life could be instead of a list of things not to do. So then, when the reader sees just how fine life and love can be, the reader just runs right out and does it.
It took from morning until midday for Peter and Angelina to climb down from the hidden mountain lake, the breezes governing them as they gently flew down the slope through the alpine fields of heather and returned to the village.
We have joy and happiness, a double treasure, said Angelina. Happiness being our wealth of contentment.
That's a good definition, answered Peter, for happiness is defined as the state of being content with what you have.
And of reveling in the moment.
That's what we have right now.
We have joy and happiness, a double treasure, said Angelina. Happiness being our wealth of contentment.
That's a good definition, answered Peter, for happiness is defined as the state of being content with what you have.
And of reveling in the moment.
That's what we have right now.
And appreciating our very existence and love.
And our good health, all with gratitude.
And every other good, stable, and smooth thing that the brain ordinarily filters out when the scene is unchanging.
Unchangingly wonderful. But you're right. The brain, allowed to go its own way due to the old fight or flight response, usually only takes note of what's changing, hurting, or bad.
But we don't let that happen.
No, we have gratitude and appreciation for all that we give to each other. And we're thankful for life and for all of our senses.
Reaching town, Peter and Angelina sat down to brunch at an outdoor cafe, Angelina having quiche and Peter having chicken and shrimp over linguine. This was one of many long, warm summers spent in the cool sandstone farmhouse that sheltered them in the dark shade of the pines, which also served to block the wind in the winter. And so it was that several years passed for Peter and Angelina, during which they continued to build on their relationship, always keeping it new and interesting.
Exciting and serene at the same time. Sounds exciting.
It's so we can float down the creek and row through the ponds and on toward the town, lake, and beach.
Well, I guess I could have known that. I am surprised. A two-person inflatable boat with oars. What's that? Asked Peter. One day Peter arrived at their farmhouse and found a boat in their bed and Angelina sitting in the boat.
It was a small boat, and they fit snugly into it, sitting face to face, their legs crossing and barely allowing for the oars to pass over. However, the relaxing sensations from floating made up for any small inconveniences of comfort as they rowed forth from the town dock, where an old fisherman looked at them and thereby remembered his youth. Sometimes they'd use the oars, but often they'd just float on the river tide that pushed up the inlet. Boating was like the weightless feeling that comes just after making love, that effortless gliding in the aura of spirituality and sensuality. They found a creek feeding the inlet and drifted up it amidst jungle like bird cries and imaginary alligators. Later, they crossed the channel to a nature sanctuary and disembarked there into the woods for kisses and privacies, which were never chronicled in their journals, for this was Neverland, and therein the adventures remained, but we can surely imagine it by now.
We've been together many years now, Peter. Happy anniversary. We've always kept our relationship new. S1, thanks, we've done well.
And always kept it full of new adventures like the boat.
We still focus on the good things, even the littlest things, whereas later on in their relationships, some couples only focus in on the bad, especially the little trivial things.
We've never said anything to each other that couldn't have been said on a honeymoon.
And so our liaison has been one continuing honeymoon.
Peter and Angelina had been walking the Appalachian Trail throughout a perfect autumn, alone together in the woods, much as they had been long ago at the beginning of this epic. I have never seen a bluer sky than that of October's, remarked Peter.
Perhaps it is because of the cool, dry air. The vision is but enhanced by the foreground of the colorful orange tree leaves. This is the last true blue that we shall see for some time. It's only fitting that it be the best of times, the bluest of times.
Following the harvest, the moon was still a strange sight at 11 a.m. setting in the west, quite a large chunk missing from its battered orb. Also, there was the sun well risen in the east, seeming to balance the moon as its echo. The duo made their way through a lonely upland, wild and still, where October's last zephyrs whispered at will, as if they were praying for the souls of the dead. Towards evening on a November's day, the first quarter moon rose very early, sitting atop the evening star, but then rose later and later each day, drawing away from Venus and thereby adding light to its own face.
No leaves, no warmth, no sky, no snow, November. November is a more difficult time. The glory of the summer and of the leaves is gone, and it seems like it has been gone for years, but the spirit of the holiday season is not yet at hand. The gray and rainy skies are a stark contrast to the dry blue skies of October. There is no snow yet for winter sports, and the land remains barren. The land is dead, and the very year itself continues to die in the night. The day is so short that when one gets home for dinner, it already seems time for bed. Time for hibernation, perhaps. To these feelings add the specter of a long, drawn-out winter. Now we even long for February. Come December, we wake a little, when auroras will set fire to the polar heavens to give color to our lives during the festival of the Yule.
The storm is long gone and is just a memory now. The day, though nearly over now, is bright near its end. Helios has warmed our hearts. Twilight now welcomes all. Twilight. That magical hour after sunset when people love to stroll the village square. The second summer was warm but brief this year, and some weeks passed. The now chill winds hastened the couple's approach to the nearest inn. The twosome looked at the rising omen of winter in the very late night sky. Orion, king of the bejeweled winter sky, backbone of our nights, said Peter, wield your sword above our heads, but please never below. There in the road ahead, a huge yellow beast lay dead ahead and was growing larger by the second. Right in front of their eyes did it lie. It was, of course, the moon. I think that the November frost moon is even more impressive than that of the harvest. It is so colorful and intimidating. The moon rose straight into a thunderhead as an old lady opened the door of the inn. "Tit for tat," she said as she farted at the thunder.
Christmas came and went at the inn. hardly making a dent in the already festive atmosphere. However, the stone walls and withered gates of the inn had warmed with the festival of the Yule, the baker's cakes, the rituals of the Druids, and the cutting of the sacred mistletoe from the chosen oak.
Lazy winter days turned into weeks. Many more seasons of middle age came and went for Peter and Angelina, and for all of their thoughts of impending mortality brought on by the entrance into late middle age, Peter and Angelina sailed on in their youthful relationship through many more wonderful decades of love. We rejoined them very late in their elder years. All of you, dear readers, must live and write the years in between. In their old age, Peter and Angelina were still somewhat sprightly since they had eaten right, stayed out of direct sunlight, and had gotten plenty of exercise from tennis, walking, and lovemaking. But life, too, had taken its toll, and so they needed extra sleep at times, plus much loving care through illnesses. They enjoyed a slower, gentler style of adventure and passion, but even all the more they could pause now and appreciate life's wonders at this slower pace, and observed in a new light what they had sometimes raced past in their youth when they were as fleet of foot as deer. Now the mountain had to come to them. They felt comfort in its bulk, and the old memories welled and made each day bright. They had to move back into town since the farmhouse became too remote for them. There they again played hearts, rummy, and bridge on the porch of the old Victorian home where they'd met a lifetime ago, when Peter had somehow found her.
How was your life?
Very fine. And if I had to live it once more, I'd love you all over again.
And another round for me too.
Here, here.
Ditto.
Let's take one last walk like we used 2 years ago, if we can.
Yes, let's roam again, Peter, even though it may take us all day. Let's take an autumn stroll through our old woods that we've now made into a nature reserve and sanctuary.
Yes, I'm feeling extra energetic today for some reason.
Me too. Perhaps it's our last hurrah, Peter.
I think so. Angelina and Peter, already in very old age, somehow were able to take a long stroll into the forest that they had known long, long ago. It had been an unusually long autumn, and now, on a warm day in early November, a few leaves yet hung upon the trees, having drunk deeply of the excessive warmth and moisture that had prolonged the season.
But there was frost on the morn, and most of the ducks had flown, so there was a certain feeling that this day would be Peter and Angelina's farewell to autumn. They'd often sought refuge here from the noise of day in the quiet recesses of the nature sanctuary, languishing here on those legendary summer afternoons when down by the creek they'd play where no one but the fishermen knew.
There they'd eat lunch and read new poems to each other and then lounge through the afternoon with naught but the wandering airs as a warm blanket. But now the second season blossoms were raising their final cheer. They broke open a bottle of apple cider and gave each other a sip.
They soon found the path and followed it as best they could, often having to sweep aside the pesky briars with a stick, deftly giving way to the poison ivy. Stopping to untangle some prickers and stickers, they stood on a high ridge and looked down hundreds of feet to the creek below, and slightly shuddered with the sight, imagining the length of the fall.
Peter, a boy again for a moment, threw a rock into the water. The partners walked single file, taking turns leading the way, kissing as they passed, stalking along the ridge, much as the Indians once did after they'd made this trail a long time ago.
The aged lovers labored over the fallen trees and branches. However, they quickly became energized by this steady exertion and eased themselves along the well-worn trail, passing a quaint wooden bench overlooking a bluff. Here they stopped, as they always had, and ate a little snack of nuts and raisins.
A familiar hillside sloped down from the trail to the creek, and here they headed down, slipping and sliding most of the way, sometimes holding on to branches for a little guidance and for braking. They came to a level spot near the shore where the view was blocked by some fallen trees.
Here they made camp, first gathering leaves for softness underneath, and placed a blanket over the gaps in the openings between the fallen trees to shield them from the night winds, and finally unzipped each of their sleeping bags and rejoined them into one large one. Here the weary hikers rested, as from the torrent of everyday life, as when riding its waves at crest one must retreat to some deeper place, where the wellspring cools, and look into its depths to find that other source, and here by some inner sense against it pressed.
So it was that they read and wrote for a while. Up above they could see the blue sky between some of the yellow leaves that yet remained on the branches. Now and then a grasshopper was discovered on the log next to them, and they were glad to have such a visitor. Ducks and geese flew overhead, and all they could hear was the wind in the trees.
Supper was a chicken club sandwich with apple cider. The warmth of the day flooded all about them during the afternoon. Peter picked up a beetle in his hand, along with an assortment of little sticks and twigs. He also found a chrysalis, probably containing a glowworm or a butterfly.
Now and again a bald eagle would dive and catch a fish from the creek. The extended autumn had given them a sort of second spring in which they could bloom again with the fall flowers, rare as could be, like some heaven descended in which they, too, might one day again raise up their cups to toast where no one knows.
Peter felt all abuzz as a bee might feel in the presence of his rosy partner, and Angelina was once again in flower. Memories from half a century ago flooded over them like a warm quilted comforter. Once again they inhaled the perfumed air and drank the clear cold water from the stream.
Long they lay in the embrace of love, awash on their love-drenched shore, and in their passionate intensity lost track of the world around them, having by then floated free of their senses, and were then quite surprised to look up and see a rabbit and a dove sitting right beside them, the fabled wildlife of the nature sanctuary.
And it was on this remote shore of human soul that they felt restored in life and spirit, having learned long ago that love was the only flame that lit this endeavor on earth.
The sun was setting early, as it was wont to do on a November day.
They looked up, dumbstruck by the silence of this change whereby the breezes suddenly fainted, dying in the half-light, as all around them, in some sort of caress suspended, the departing day softly kissed the arriving night. And it was for this moment that the airs had slowed, now waiting for those lovers to brood and hold back the death of dusk, if just for a little while, for the night's dark shadow was terribly ponderous and pending.
Dead calm descended, and for those timeless instants stretching on into moments, they too felt neither here nor there, but in twilight.
The day's gold turned into a jeweled night of sapphires, rubies, and emeralds, like autumn's last fireflies sparkling in the sky, soon, though, perhaps, to turn from stars into snowflakes.
One last word in her journal Angelina wrote just before she closed it for lack of light, Jack Frost is here, for I have seen the hooded crow.
A chill swept the air, and they quickly bundled into the sleeping bag, warm within, as in each other's arms they lay.
They said good night and goodbye too, and soon drowsed fast away like two insects hibernating in a fluffy cocoon, while somewhere out in the woods the season's last crickets found that they could sing no more, and the frogs headed for the bottom of the pond.
Farewell. Peter died a few days later at age 92 on a soft autumn night while sitting on the porch of the sandstone farmhouse. Angelina was at his side as always. A few minutes before, a singing bird had landed on the railing, the bird of time, and Peter had turned to Angelina and had said, "I have to go now, I love you." Peter died a few days later at age 92 on a soft autumn night while sitting on the porch of the sandstone farmhouse. Angelina was at his side as always. A few minutes before, a singing bird had landed on the railing, the bird of time, and I had turned to Angelina and had said, "I have to go now, I love you."
And she'd whispered to him, "Come back to me, Peter."
Peter smiled, finding serenity even in death, and breathed his last breath happy to the last as the angel of light came and blessed him.
Later, at age 92, on a soft autumn night, while sitting on the porch of the sandstone farmhouse, Angelina was at his side as always. A few minutes before, a singing bird had landed on the railing, the bird of time, and Peter had turned to Angelina and had said, "I have to go now, I love you." She'd whispered to him, "Come back to me, Peter." Peter smiled, finding serenity even in death, and breathed his last breath happy to the last. As the angel of light came and blessed him, the soft winds murmured a dirge as darkness fell, and the flowered Canterbury bells rang their funereal tune.
Peter was buried 2 days later in the rural cemetery, and after all the eulogies had been said, and after the grave had been covered with dirt, and after everyone had gone home, only one person remained behind, Angelina, and she lay down on Peter's grave to die, ready to melt into the dust and intermingle with his throughout all eternity. After a day or so, she got up, or so it seemed, irresistibly drawn by the enchanting tune of a nightingale, and as such she became encased in the magic of its song. As a sheen was formed around her into a transparent dome, she protected therein from the elements. From this invisible and charmed haven, she could again see into the life of things, as she watched Old Autumn making his last rounds, and she soon saw the pine trees throwing down their cones as winter came. The elves themselves, now visible to her, lay down to sleep, cuddled into the fluffy beds of wild clematis. The snow fell for several weeks, although the winter blossoms still sprouted on the blackthorns, and then the nightingale, having transferred its power to Angelina's encasement, impaled itself on the thorn, turning the blossoms red with the life that fled, and all the while Angelina could see the spot where Peter lay buried, like some kind of flower bulb, awaiting a new birth in some far and distant spring.
Was buried 2 days later in the rural cemetery. And after all the eulogies had been said, and after the grave had been covered with dirt, and after everyone had gone home, only one person remained behind, Angelina, and she lay down on Peter's grave to die, ready to melt into the dust and intermingle with his throughout all eternity.
After a day or so, she got up, or so it seemed, irresistibly drawn by the enchanting tune of a nightingale, and as such she became encased in the magic of its song. As a sheen was formed around her into a transparent dome, she protected therein from the elements. From this invisible and charmed haven, she could again see into the life of things, as she watched old autumn making his last rounds, and she soon saw the pine trees throwing down their cones as winter came. The elves themselves, now visible to her, lay down to sleep, cuddled into the fluffy beds of wild clematis.
After a day or so, she got up, or so it seemed, irresistibly drawn by the enchanting tune of a nightingale. And as such she became encased in the magic of its song, as a sheen was formed around her into a transparent dome. She protected therein from the elements. From this invisible and charmed hen, she could again see into the life of things, as she watched old autumn making his last rounds. And she soon saw the pine trees throwing down their cones as winter came. The elves themselves, now visible to her, lay down to sleep, cuddled into the fluffy beds of wild clematis.
The snow fell for several weeks, although the winter blossoms still sprouted on the blackthorns, and then the nightingale, having transferred its power to Angelina's encasement, impaled itself on the thorn, turning the blossoms red with the life that fled, and all the while Angelina could see the spot where Peter lay buried, like some kind of flower bulb, awaiting a new birth in some far and distant spring. Then, for a while, her spirit soared, like that of her angel namesake, as she met Peter's soul at the gate of heaven, where he told her as he entered, "I'll be back. Your love will bring me back. Find me as I found you." Back down to earth, having been returned to her enchanted shell, Angelina felt the love he'd left behind, and it brought her warmth and comfort in her apparently endless vigil, the time moving slowly at first. However, soon the months seemed to pass by in an instant, as all the while the bird's song yet reverberated within her.
The snow fell for several weeks, although the winter blossoms still sprouted on the black thorns. And Then the nightingale, having transferred its power to Angelina's encasement, impaled itself on the thorn, turning the blossoms red with the life that fled. And all the while Angelina could see the spot where Peter lay buried, like some kind of flower ball awaiting a new birth in some far and distant spring. There for a while her spirit soared like that of her angel namesake as she met Peter's soul at the gate of heaven, where he told her as he entered, "I'll be back, your love will bring me back. Find me as I found you, back down to earth, having been returned to her enchanted shell." Angelina felt the love he'd left behind, and it brought her warmth and comfort in her apparently endless vigil, the time moving slowly at first. But soon the months seemed to pass by in an instant, as all the while the bird's song yet reverberated within her sea.
Seasons came and went, the landscape changing around her as in time-lapse photography. Trees sprouted in the fields like grass. The sun raced through the sky in a perpetual afterglow of a golden arch. Even the 1,000-year-old yew trees grew. Weeds covered the flower gardens and grew up through the porch of the old sandstone farmhouse. Each day Angelina grew younger in her netherworld, the aches and pains of the years falling away like so much chaff.
Seasons came and went, the landscape changing around her, as in time-lapse photography. Trees rooted in the fields like grass, the sun raced through the sky in a perpetual afterglow of a golden march. Even the 1,000-year-old yew trees grew, weeds covered the flower gardens, and grew up through the porch of the old sandstone farmhouse. Each day Angelina grew younger in her netherworld. The aches and pains of the years fall away like so much chaff.
Each day Angelina grew younger in her netherworld, the aches and pains of the years falling away like so much chaff.
At age 24, she was released from her crystal dome and stepped out into a cold, white winter. Surely all the world was dead, but suddenly a snowdrop flower appeared in the heat of a tombstone.
And with a wave of a wand, an early spring began, Angelina sprouting back into life like some kind of winter jasmine.
Dancing in moonlight's embrace, with dreams of a tiara and a royal grace. She's a
age 24, she was released from her crystal dome and stepped out into a cold white winter. Surely all the world was dead, but suddenly a snowdrop flower appeared in the heat of a tombstone as a fairy stood over her grave. 'Tis not dead, the fairy said, and with a wave of a wand an early spring began. Angelina sprouting back into life, like some kind of winter jasmine.
S4, 'Tis Not Dead.
The elves then blew their pipes to awaken all of nature. Double daisies of double love sprouted all over the rural cemetery in the memory of Peter and Angelina's love.
The years then blew their pipes to awaken all of nature. Double daisies of double love sprouted all of the rural cemetery in the memory of Peter and Angelina's love. Kisses grew on the bushes as bits of blossoms from someone dear. From the one who had died and given his fragrance to the night. Yesterday had turned into yesteryear, 2 decades had passed.
Angelina had to find Peter. She could feel his living presence out there somewhere in the world. Not knowing where to go at first, she let her instincts guide her, just as his had led him to Rhinecliff to find her. The crow landed at her feet, and she followed it to the old train station. The train's now running magnetically 100 feet off the ground in order to allow people better access to the pure, clean river. She boarded a southbound transport and got off at Fishkill for reasons unknown. In Fishkill, which was now a borough of New York City, she walked through the crowds, arriving at an electronic art center where a meeting was going on.
Angelina had to find Peter. She could feel his living presence out there somewhere in the world. Not knowing where to go at first, she let her instincts guide her, just as his had led him to Rhinecliff to find her. The crow landed at her feet, and she followed it to the old train station. The train's now running magnetically 100 feet off the ground in order to allow people better access to the pure clean river. She boarded a southbound transport and got off at Fishkill for reasons unknown. In Fishkill, which was now a borough of New York City, she walked through the crowds, arriving at an electronic art center where a meeting was going on.
She stepped inside and immediately felt an electricity and a chemistry emanating from a man who was painting at an electronic easel. One who suddenly stopped and looked at her intently. Peter looked a bit different than before, younger, of course, but then she herself looked in a mirror and saw that she too was younger and a bit different looking. She hesitated, sure, but still nervous, and then walked toward him as all the room seemed to watch her.
Where is that scene that you're painting, that old farmhouse?
I'm not sure, I've never been there. The scene just sort of keeps coming to me as an artistic vision. It seems as if somehow I've always known of it.
That retreat is the sandstone farmhouse where we used to live, Peter. I'll show it to you this afternoon.
Angelina, you've returned and you've found me. I knew you'd come back someday.
She stepped inside and immediately felt an electricity emanating from a man who was painting at an electronic easel. One who suddenly stopped and looked at her intently. Peter looked a bit different than before, younger of course, but then she herself looked in a mirror and saw that she too was younger. And a bit different look, she hesitated, sure but still nervous, and then walked toward him as all the room seemed to watch her. Where is that scene that you're painting? That old farmhouse, she asked him. I'm not sure, he answered. I've never been there. The scene just sort of keeps coming to me as an artistic vision. It seems as if somehow I've always known of it. It is the sandstone farmhouse where we used to live. Peter showed it to this afternoon. Angelina, you've returned and you found me. I knew you'd come back someday. It's been a long time.
We are the triumph
Of life, love, and being.
I feel so alive, so invigorated, so satisfied, so loving.
We're young again, she answered, younger than ever.
Is that scene that you're painting? That old farmhouse, she asked him. I'm not sure, he answered. I've never been there. The scene just sort of keeps coming to me as an artistic vision. It seems as if somehow I've always known of it. We've always known of it. It is the sandstone farmhouse where we used to live. Peter showed it to this afternoon. Angelina, you've returned and you found me. I knew you'd come back someday. It's been a long time.
I came as soon as I could. I was preserved and given youth in a crystal dome in some sort of fairyland during all the while that you were growing up through your new boyhood into the man
with me always and remember more and more of us with each incarnation. It's getting easier, I remember now being old and dying in your arms on the front porch on that autumnal night. Our love was so strong that it brought us back for yet another encore. We are the triumph of life, love, and being.
Future times, time has passed. In the year 2035, Peter and Angelina left the sealed community near Fishkill for good, knowing that they could never return, but felt ever safe from the new viruses and knowing that they would only be in contact with each other in the old sandstone farmhouse of the naturally purified forest. They had each always been isolated in their personality types, as had now been revealed through the insights of the new millennium, being introverted intuitive feelers, a mere 1% of the population, and especially isolated in school among the dutiful sensing judging types, the competent intuitive thinking types, and the playful sensing perceiving types, until they met each other, that is, which was, by the way, a 1 in 10,000 chance. Peter would often joke to Angelina that he had to go through 9,999 women to find her, and she would always say that no one ever loved her like Peter did since they could never understand her. Yes, the bonding of two intuitive feeling types certainly led to what others types might call a lot of mush. But in this age of pandemics, there were advantages to being able to enjoy another person's presence and fantasies 24 hours a day. Other advances of the new age had brought to direct light the very biochemical nature of our being, with such old ideas of religious souls and other magical properties now long gone the way of alchemy, astrology, and the dodo bird. Clearly now, evolution and all that it entailed was appreciated by all but a few of the forever delusioned. Furthermore, drugs had been tamed to remove the worst of the aversive biological substrates from the mind, especially spurious high anxiety, depression, obsession, and insane violence. And, optionally, those unwelcome emotions that have always been forced upon us, such as jealousy.
Advances of the new age have brought to direct light the very biochemical nature of our being, with such old ideas of religious souls and other magical properties now long gone. The way of alchemy, astrology, and the dodo bird, clearly now evolution, and all that it entailed was appreciated by all but a few of the forever delusion. had been made to remove the worst of the aversive biological substrates from the mind, especially high anxiety, depression, obsession, panic, and insane violence, and optionally other unwelcome forced emotions.
However, new and virulent infections still swept the body, especially in the year 2025, when over 2 billion died of EBL in Europea. But at least more and more of the myths of past ignorances, no longer excusable in the age of information, had given way to the solutions of science and had gone far past the simple DNA revelations of the previous century. Indeed, the human genome had been mapped even in the late 1990s, and now, some 30-some years later, had inspired cures for cancer, leukemia, and almost every other genetic disease. Humans now had a lifespan of who knows how long, for it remained to be seen, and if recent work on the aging preventative drugs came to fruition, perhaps one could live forever. For there were now drugs that lengthened the junk DNA telomeres that protected the ends of the DNA strands that were formerly torn away during cell division.
The lifespan of who knows how long, for there were drugs that lengthened the junk DNA that protected the ends of the strands that were formerly torn away during cell division. That's like shoelaces fraying.
As discussed previously, horrible and torturous emotions were seen for what they were, that is, just spurious molecular events. And so serotonin reuptake inhibitors became the new fluoride of the water supply, so that the primitive and long useless negative feedback mechanisms in our central nervous systems could no longer send out thousands of years old notices. Therefore, we could no longer be plagued by, for example, the horrid persistence of negative or anxious thoughts, that downward spiraling feedback loop which never led to anything positive. Blame itself had, of course, fallen too, as it had to, after it had been proved that aggressive urges were not completely controllable due to the remaining chemical imbalances of the brain. But criminals were still locked up in order to protect society. Free will itself was still on shaky ground, but falling fast as it was realized that the brain's decisions are predetermined by memories, associations, and learned behaviors right up to the instant of choice. Free will had, in fact, been declared nonsensical, as the free and free will didn't actually mean anything. For what good would be a brain that made random or semi-random choices based on nothing?
Realize that the brain's decisions are predetermined by memories, associations, and learned behaviors right up to the instant of choice. Free will had in fact been declared nonsensical, as the free will didn't actually mean anything. For what good would be a brain that made random choices? Set it free.
Many, of course, still thought that they had choices, such as, let's say, taking up smoking. But since those choices were only apparent and not really them, they didn't ever take those choices. Furthermore, it was discovered that 90% of what the brain didn't even reach one's consciousness. And what did reach consciousness came a startling half a second after the brain was done doing its analysis, giving us, at the very most perhaps, somewhat of a minor veto power, still of the brain's origination, but showing that we were often just executives and/or tourists along for the ride, and certainly out of the brain's deep informative loop.
I've discovered that 90% of what the brain didn't even reach one's consciousness, and what did reach came a startling half a second after the brain was done doing its analysis, showing that we were just tourists along for the ride.
However, the person as a whole was, at least, still real, and now, faced with all these revelations, was strangely free, not only from the superstitions and folk science of 2,000 years ago, but also in the way that the existentialists had hinted at, free to create a meaning out of one's life. Consciousness, at the end of the day, was seen to be of a fundamental dual form of information, reflecting that of the neurological, this like the quantum world, showing complementarity and correspondence, a basic force even like space-time and mass energy that reflected brain processes as conscious information, albeit 300 to 500 milliseconds later. Animals had been long recognized as having consciousness too, and feeling like humans, although to a lesser degree, and some, as such, like chimps, became as special and protected as humans and were granted personhood status.
Some animals, like chimps, were granted personhood status. Humans now had a lifespan of who knows how long, for there were drugs that lengthened the junked DNA that protected the ends of the strands that were formerly torn away during cell division.
Luckily, too, science had developed tasty artificial meat, and so cattle and other animals no longer needed to be slaughtered by us, who they would have surely regarded, if they could, as Hitlers.
Science had developed tasty artificial meat.
What we think is hard reality is but a much better representation. Sights are seen and sounds are heard, things are felt and touched, but do not exist exactly as such, but are made as so by our modeling of reality, the same as that used in dreams. In night dreams, random brainwaves and memories, associations and learnings are woven from their real frequency domains, although the dreams come from static and noise that the brain still uses to try to make sense of as best it can in its half-awake, half-working state, for that is its job. As in waking life, we feel and touch things in our dreams as well as taste and smell them. Basically, our vision interprets waves, fields, and interference patterns. People had come to see what was absolute, eternal, and the basis of all existence, realizing that all of the stuff in our world, including our brains, minds, and consciousness, is biological and is made of molecules, and they are made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons and quarks, or both from vibrating strings, perhaps, whatever it is that we call that which is the bottommost material stuff. Let us simply call it energy. For the form does not matter. It may be a field, actual stuff, or some swirling energy that gives us an illusion of solidity, or even a vibrating string. What's important is that it is the most fundamental and absolute substance, which implies that each and every composite system made from it is totally dependent on it for its existence. Everything, even God's. Energy being made of itself, either having been always there, or a balanced and ongoing distribution of nothing, it doesn't matter which, cannot be created or destroyed, and was therefore, or its ever distributed sourcing, eternal and omnipresent. This was called God, the ground of determination. Energy can perhaps, as said, even amount to nothing and come from nothing, for perhaps nothing is composed and balanced of opposite, plus and minus aspects of this energy. Perhaps nothing is what our universe will eventually amount to. But for now, somehow positive energy prevails around here, since we are indeed here, and has separated or balanced from with the negative, and has granted us a preponderance of plus-type stuff in our universe, antimatter being elsewhere, or perhaps the minus-type stuff is embodied in gravity's power. It doesn't really matter that much where it is. God and Brahman solutions are short-sighted. Being merely the formation of a larger question that one then takes as an answer. Besides, systems of mind doing planning, thinking, and doing cannot be first, for the parts beneath would have to be there earlier. The simpler that stuff is, the more unstable it is, accepting the inert, ever going through phase changes and or recombining upward. So this is a clue. Energy must be conserved, not being able to come from nowhere unless it is balanced, positive and negative. So this is a clue. The universe is here, this being any old time and place that is not special. So this is a clue. Jumping to a conclusion from the two impossible choices, it could be that since forever stuff just is, that it had no prime mover. However, if it is a distribution of the perfectly unstable and simplest state, nothing, then that explains the ongoing production of opposite virtual pairs. And since this has been going on forever, it is pretty much the same as saying that stuff was forever, so we can even combine the two. However, if not, it doesn't even matter for the conclusions, these being that we are free to be and that totality had no creation, thus leaving out a creator, which is why we are free. Not to again mention the impossibility of the first cause already being complicated. So the simple toe, as simple it must be, is that any old result could have come about here or anywhere, and perhaps always did and does anytime, anywhere. Either that, or there is just one universe, itself matching totality, one that recycles itself over billions of years. But this is but a small point, the important points being that the notion of the causeless is itself the toe. This causeless necessarily being the law of no law, one with no particular formation, and that there could be no built-in meaning, which may be disturbing to some who wanted to be watched over, but they forget that they then would not have the ultimate freedom to make their own meaning of outlife and the situation of the human condition. Note that all this becomes the same result for those who say that they don't know. So the temporary conclusion is that the why is that something must be because nothing cannot stay. The how being some kind of balance of opposites occurring from the only possible prime mover that is ever infinite and eternal, nothing, such as the virtual pairs or positive stuff versus negative gravity, or even the polarity of charge nullifying all existence in the overview, the ever-production of stuff ongoing, this being akin to it always there. It's not as interesting as we thought it would be, but then again, how could it be way, way down? The real excitement is at the other end of the spectrum, the complex, where we are thrust into existence, which even precedes in importance that of essence. Of course, this doesn't stop some mammals from making things up, such as that life can only come from life, even then abruptly flip-flopping to then say that the life then didn't need to come from life, etc. Their initial basis now in a shambles, but whoever said that mammals had to be sensible? Some are so silly as to say that all is fake, as like for show in a dream, only then to have some actually really real guy beneath named Brahman popping up all of the sudden, drowsing, sleeping, and dreaming his life away, his own means of being totally unexplained and ignored. This being some kind of strange psychological stopping point of complete satisfaction, totally contrary to their big need for explanation of a lesser question in the first place. Well, some mammals are not only vainglorious and far from humble, thinking themselves to be the center of all and the measure of all things, but just plain weird, making outright baseless and ungrounded pronunciations by fiat, even then deceptively preaching these theories as fact and truth to the young and unsuspecting, even compounding that lack of ethics but trying to protect the beliefs of the imaginary invisibles by going to war over them, onto their own bloody end. It was a snowy winter day in the old sandstone farmhouse in the year 2037, and Peter and Angelina would pretend that it was the year 1945, a fantasy game they often played, 1945 being chosen because it was a happy time just after World War II, and because most of the United States had indoor plumbing by then.
Of course, in 1945, there was no detailed and local weather net, and so they weren't allowed to know, by the rules of pretending, if a snowstorm was coming or how many inches they would get.
Nor did they care to know anyway, for it put some of the mystery back into nature's hands.
They found an oldies station on the radio net and began dancing as the swing music filled the air. This tune's perfect, isn't it?
Absolutely, it just sweeps you away.
They stopped dancing for a moment and just held each other close.
Kissing and laughing because we always hibernate in winter anyway, snow or no snow.
Another laugh was had in noting that Peter and Angelina had no TV to turn off, they not even owning one, for there was no TV in 1945.
Nor could they use the telephone, since they either pretended that they were too rural to have one, or that it was a party line and was ever busy. But then yet another laugh, since in current times they would always turn off their wrist phones anyway, ever complete in their isolation from the world's trivial intrusions.
Out in the yard was an old '56 Chevy, close enough to the '40s, which was already half covered with snow and memories, and so this became their car, forgetting, of course, that they ever had personal magnetic transports.
Angelina allowed her ever-lengthening long legs to slip out of her robe for Peter to note, since she was an incorrigibly romantic and sensuous woman in Peter's presence.
And Peter was always a consistent worker of miracles in her. They were an ever-escalating feedback loop of love in operation.
As naturalists, they were able to absorb with awestruck reverence scenes of overpowering sublimity far beyond the simple prettiness. As painters and patrons of the visual arts, they were able to behold representative vision in a holographic reality of indescribable glory.
Funny, said Peter, that in modern times 95% of what we think we need was not even invented in 1945.
But love transcends all of these things, said Angelina as she led Peter up the stairs and into their bedroom done in sort of an Indian palace style, with veils hanging from the ceiling.
What is life?
To find the answer, one must live it fully.
We rejoin our namers of the rose in the triumph of life many centuries later, long after these times, around the year 2165, as they visit the place where it all began, each of them about 162 years old. They are still very much together and have again found the complete happiness that was inspired by the advice of the Book of Quatrains and the many other books that they had written together.
He and she have now become I and she, for the story's narrator was, of course, also the participant. It was on the last day of Indian summer that I approached the side entrance of the nature reserve, the one near the old graveyard, for we felt that the cemetery was a place that was both for the living and the dead. As I left our cabin and walked through the streets, I was saddened, though in a pleasant way, when I saw the last flowers of autumn still trying to push up through and around the leaves that the fall had everywhere bestrewn. Sir. In one garden there was a sundial and an old man sitting silently next to it. In my mind I named him Care. The gentle old man nodded his assent as I looked to pick some flowers to bring to her, my holy partner, while Care slowly marked the hours by the shadows that crept over time's face. Angelina was not with me, for she liked to wait in the cemetery, resting up against a tombstone and reading or writing the time away until I arrived at our afternoon rendezvous. My steps therefore hurried on through and over the cemetery gate, now lying broken and rotting on the ground. Here the path rose up the hill, where many had taken their last journey. Carrying my half of the supplies and sleeping gear, I walked up and up, my steps heavy and plodding at first, but then lightening and quickening with the thought of my angel waiting up there. I picked up the nature path behind the tombs, braving the briars, the poison ivy, and the wandering brush that often obscured the trail. I soon arrived among the tombstones, and there she was, as often as not, next to the empty grave of Jane Hamilton. We had always joked that perhaps Jane was now on the loose, but since then, Angelina had adopted Jane's last abode as her own, and was warming herself with the heat of the gravestone. Of course, had I not seen this scene before, I might have thought that here lies Jane, but I just smiled and kissed her awake, handing her the last flowers of the year. I soon arrived among the tombstones, and there she was, as often as not, next to the empty grave of Jane Hamilton. We had always joked that perhaps Jane was now on the loose, but since then Angelina had adopted Jane's last abode as her own, and was warming herself with the heat of the gravestone. Of course, had I not seen this scene before, I might have thought that here lies Jane, but I just smiled and kissed her awake, handing her the last flowers of the year. Leaves began to flutter down on us as the wind rustled the trees which probably weren't even here when the cemetery was last used. There seemed to be no dates on the tombstones later than the 1800s, say 1875 or so. So we were resting in a place that had perhaps been forgotten forever. Closing our eyes, we imagined the scene without the trees and the new growth as it probably once was, a clearing covered with leafy ground plants which alone had still persisted. In our minds, we saw a meadow on a hill where the stones stood proud, where Victorian hearse carriages from the gaslight era lumbered up the hill with the dead, their mourning processions coming on behind. But now the gravestones leaned every which way, many of them cracked or in pieces, some even laying down flat and many others not readable, the scene being much overgrown and underswept. Well, little by little, each time we came here, we'd start clearing the brush and righting the stones, and so we did that for a while. We read some of the inscriptions engraved on the stones. The first, its dates denoting an infant's short smile of years, read, "It was so soon that I was done for, that's it's a wonder what I was begun for." Another said, apparently from beyond the grave, "My death is separate from life by just a breath." Another said with somewhat dry humor, "Please turn down your cup to my thirsty lips." Another, of a local writer, words resting in print, read, "Whither has flown the spirit from the dead, but rests here as the soul in all I've said." The last one showed a picture of a raised glass and said, "Take heavenly sups from your earthly cup, and live your life while the wine flows red." We took this last one as a sign to move on, saving the other inscriptions for next time, being careful as we walked not to fall into any of the empty or sunken grave sites. We broke open a bottle of apple cider, gave each other a sip, and then, thinking back of Omar, poured a few drops of our precious drink into the ground. Refreshed, we wandered among the tombs, using some as stepping stones, and quickly ran on out of the back of the cemetery, where we soon lay asleep in the old caretaker's hut.
We dreamed of a world white in the moonlight, of a crystalline cathedral built from falling stars in the holy night. It was then that aged winter came, looked at us while we slept, and cried down his crystal tears on us. For our youth and beauty had made the old man mourn for summer's love, for the waving wheat and corn, and even more so for the late autumn mild who, withered, wan, had just now passed on, taking us both with him, leaving the earth a widow, weather-worn. To Angelina, "Your figure is like a tree bending with surges of wind, calling your arms unto me. Your passions are unsinned, the perfection of my fancy, of my ideals you are twinned. Your spirit is of eternity, all-pervading, never-ending, comforting in its certainty.
Your love rises on the wing, singing heaven's rhythm there. Vibrations sweep my heartstrings. You're touching me everywhere in all ways, within and without. You fan my flames, they flare. Your eyes gaze, to me they call. They are deep, glowing, bright. Therein I see forever and all. Like the day snuggling the night, your being merges with mine, mingling in magical twilight. Your visions of love match mine. Often I have dreamt you up. Now you're here, lovely and fine. You're the elixir that fills my cup, love's essence distilled into being. The scented breeze lifts me up. This perfume is love fleeing from you as you give it away with kind grace all foreseeing. Now take us to where we'll stay, to the forest home built for us, where nature is and lovers play.
The triumph of life, love, and being. With Peter and Angelina. Preface. This manuscript was first written in prose, and then rendered in poetry, and then transformed back into prose. So it is that the characters often speak in rhyme. There are 2 more books in this series, Ageless Times and The Kiss That Never Dies. Dedication. There is never a minute that I don't think of you, Angeline. I am captivated by your spirit that is pure and good. I am pervaded by the liveliness that is your personality. I am drenched in the passion that gives me your presence everywhere. I want to be with you, near you, holding you, touching you, and talking to you through all your adventures, responsibilities, and troubles. You are a supernova, bursting with life and energy and exploding all around me, in me, and through me. Sparkles and tingles wash over me as your angelic soul inhabits mine. I am energized and alive with the love relationship that we have created. I bask in the sunshine of your caring, goodness, and giving. You are a woman for all seasons, domestic, maternal, friend, and lover. I fly with you above the clouds. We float on the serenity, depth, and passion of our love. Our wings of connectedness lift us higher and higher through the endless skies, for our love is boundless. We are the stars, eternity's love lamps, pulsars whirling about each other, entranced in the dance of love. Your love spreads to all living things. You exude caring and true love all around. Your passion oozes onto and within me. You are life itself. You are love itself, come from heaven to earth in the form of an angel. You lift me, stir me, brighten me, radiating through my mind, heart, soul, body, and spirit. You show me how life is to be lived. We have the super ultimate relationship thanks to you, sweetheart. Love, Peter. The significance of the golden braid of life, love, and being is unveiled through the consummate enjoyment of existence by Peter and Angelina. It spans centuries of spiritual rebirths, for it is a love so strong that it can never die, for it was and is the ultimate relationship. Escaping from a monastery abbey that engulfed itself in the flames of ignorance, such as the one in the book The Name of the Rose, they, our ever-returning couple, salvage a mysterious book of quatrains that guides them through the joys and follies of the human condition as they live out its words, for the proof of all writing is to live it. So close in thought that they need not even be named at first, our couple takes a picaresque journey through the first part of the book to solve the difficulties of life, as they are encountered in their travels through the forested countryside. Subsequently, they evolve from their spirits to meet again 100 years later, close to our time, to meet the challenges of the modern world, yet as always remain ever immersed in the lushness of life and love. They appear again, futuristically, in an enlightening glimpse, to tell us where the human race is headed. Furthermore, the secrets of the mind and the universe are revealed, as well as the lore and legends of nature. Every vein in this book is loaded with ore, as Keats recommended to Shelley. And that's how life should be, a constant celebration of all that is good and worthwhile. I leave it to others to instruct via tales of failure. Seeing life as lived well is, I think, a more inspiring and memorable learning experience, for I always favor the positive approach. I write of universals, of those things that endure, of the magic of everyday experience, for the afterlife happens right now. I'm indebted to Angeline for demonstrating with me, in our relationship, that imagination and aspiration can indeed lead to realization, to Percy Shelley, for his romantic appreciations and his investigation of all living things, to John Updike for his intricate observations of daily life, to Umberto Eco and Giovanni Boccaccio for their monastical inspiration, to Hal Foster for tales of knighthood, and especially to Omar Khayyam for his knownness of existence, and to the Muses for the inspiration to write my own quatrains, not to mention my own dreams of what life could be. You will sense my tributes to them all. Writings are the summation of all we read, know, live, and dream. When I was young and unlearned, I ran breathless through meadows and forests, fast pursued by the stings of wind and rain. On and on I wandered, wild without rest, searching for a haven from life's dull pain. The storms chased me till I could go no more. I stood helpless, backed up against a door, but fell through it before any harm could reach me, cushioned by all of the dreams supporting me. I had found the library. It was a garden, half as old as time, in which poets and writers could live and write their words and rhyme, while the nightingale created the rose by moonlight magic from their thoughts sublime. The literary scenes unfolded before me, such as music often approaches and surrounds and builds on the vibrance which in one is, to fill all that lives with beautiful sounds and visions. I brushed aside the webs of gossamer, life's rites and rituals, as came to life all that mankind could remember. My quick thoughts fell, condensing into dew, while living dreams unveiled more than I knew. I wandered down memory's path, aglow in the soft beauty that it hath. I saw Johnny Keats kissing Fanny Brawne, as he spoke more than words but less than song, and Byron endowing form with fancy, and Wordsworth penning his thoughts to Lucy, and Shelley, my favorite poet, plumbing the depths of mystery. I read them all. Now they're a part of me. Deeper still I probed, looking in on it, and heard Mrs. Browning reading a sonnet. Poetically I took them all in, even the shadowy Emily Dickinson, my third cousin. So there I rested, near Vassar Library, up against a tree, savoring the feeling of their poetry, in the garden where all the flowers used in Shakespeare's plays grew together in a living bouquet. And there before me, beneath the rose tree, old Khayyam, yet alive through his quatrains, wrote his verse, looking younger than I am, and lived the proof of his philosophy of life, the writing of which was secondary. All this I remember, and much more, but I shall not write as I have before, for living and feeling must come first, and now I've a garden I can't ignore. What of the actual writing process? It is much like nature. The sun fills the waking and breathing world with the fire of imagination. In poetry and romantic prose, the sun is the power behind the mind. The moon, planets, and stars are symbols too, even the weather and the seasons. Sometimes the intellectual beauty is bright, and the ideas gush from the eternal flame, or from the living of life, the only way to fully answer the question of what is life. Sometimes inspiration fails when the shadows of clouds dim the clarity of thought. Then we wait or regroup. Eventually, however, quenchless, boundless, ever bright and burning, The mind's light searches every dark cavern, probing and imagining, its beam alighting upon the earth or high atop cloud mist, and melts, with heat, energy, and desire, the fog of lone reason and pure passion, burning it away and so dissolving it with the love of life, earth, mankind, and star, from which comes adventure, friendship, delight, joy, success, triumph, and lasting gladness throughout the sun's journey into the night, when stars shine on mind, for suns they also are. I so much felt that I was actually there in the book when I was writing it that I forgot it was just a story. The moon fills the sleeping and breathing world with the icy coolness of chaste reason, unaffected by deep burning passions, although sunlit to glow in a wan light. However, reason, unsteady as the variant moon, often does not rise in the night to guide us, but deserts us in our darkest times. We are alone on a black, cloud-bound night. Darkness drains our lives away sometimes, and sickness consumes the spirit. The mantle is heavy lead, and life's last glow seems upon us. Our eyes are as craters gone dim. Death's ebon form seeks us out and covers us with his cloak. Come away with me, we hear as he cools our burning brow. I offer you quiet peace. But then a sudden strength comes upon us, in our waning crescent wisp. In night's cold shadow we say, unhold the soul, moon reaper, we shall fully shine once more. Such are the cycles of human emotions, else the moon hides in the bright light of day or is lost behind an overcast sky. But moonless nights take us beyond reason when the stars excite us with their lights. Yes, inspiration returns with the stars, 1,000 ideas beckon from afar. Thoughts wink like lightning bugs on the pastures of consciousness. As starlight they stab the darkness of naught, until star-like Venus rises near dawn. The goddess of romantic love and passion captures us within emotion swell, while comets flash and confuse the wild sky. Do we make decisions intellectually or emotionally? Venus will talk to the moon about that in our story. Yet, soft and warm, the night caresses us in its own way, with its gentle darkness and quiet stillness. We beg her to yield her dearest secrets, to reveal the full truth of what lies behind, as Shelley inquired. Much we already know from twilight dreams and from universal poems unveiling truth and beauty. But we ask within our deepest soul to know the mysteries of the universe, to find the causes, the significance, and the ways to live and love, think and feel. Above us, fires burn the stars away. Below us, the earth turns under our feet. Within us, unworded dreams haunt the soul. Around us, night pours blackness on the ground. So we ask from the rulers of the night, not immortality, nor youth, nor birth, as Shelley says, but only that we retain some cosmic presence within us, joining in its rhythm and resonance to live knowingly. Then we sense the sweep across our heartstrings, for we're undistracted by day's bright noise. Now, in a moment of awe, we appreciate the love and goodness that can be. Such is the intent of this book, the awakening of a wonder that grants the urge to enjoy life. After reading this book of life, I would hope that the reader would run right out and live it. Rising slowly from the cold, dark hollows where the night airs fell and soundly slept, the restless wind left her secret bower and, gaining strength, lovingly surrounded and caressed the willow trees which wavered and swooned in her wake, as she, that ever-curious spirit, flew by in a cool breeze from the west on her undulating wings and spread the incense of the morning to nature's world of growing and living things. She woke the flowers from their slumber by drinking from them their blanket of dew, then told the tales of the joyous forest to the birds, who soon carried them aloft, thence into my ears, the songs of streams flowing freely, and stories of a glowing sky that promised many sunny hours to come, in the dreams of those who felt her passing. And so sleep was washed from languid eyes, as they sensed that new dawn arriving, as if some transparent veil had lifted. When she gently stirred the embers of the last watchfire and whispered softly to them that the stars had gone and day had begun. We sense anew the adventure of life. We enjoy it since we know it and love it. We do not merely live life, mind you, we are life. Such intellectual beauty returns, borne on birds' wings as song into the dawn. Imagination now soars past a day and into the season of spring's fast growth. The shade is deep and cool, like the ghost of winter passing gone but still remembered in the cool nights of spring. To be alive is the pinnacle of billions of years of evolution. We are the cosmos. Our view of life is changed forevermore. Where we are after our death is the same place we don't exist before our birth. The summer returns now, from spring's only kiss, causing the rose to bloom and mark its start, and its rising tides fill up the free spaces in our winter spirits, as we roam at ease, drink the sweets in every flower and feel the balm in every breeze. For we must thread the lovely web of life about us, drinking up deep draughts of life's delight. Life through consciousness is all there is. Fitzgerald's transmogrification of Omar's quatrains into Victorian English and his reordering of them into a Persian eclogue is primary among the rare conjunctions that made for the greatest poem in history. While writing, much more is drawn from the mind, for there is relative silence, with no starting gun, as in speaking, for it is in real time done. The muses sing of one's own depths, mind.